What happens when the abstract world of law collides with the digital architecture of virtual reality? This isn't science fiction anymore. It's a fundamental shift in how law is being practiced, understood, and most importantly, taught. So let's explore this new frontier together. Now, the framework for our discussion today comes from the foundational research of Professor Kiskinov. His work is what really gives us the map to understand what's happening at this intersection.
All right, so here's our plan. First, we'll define what we even mean by virtual legal reality. Then we'll dig into its power as a universal modeling tool. From there, we'll see how it's completely erasing old educational boundaries, how we can visualize legal knowledge, and finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the new educational paradigm this all creates.
Okay, let's dive right into our first section, defining virtual legal reality. Before we can build anything, we have to lay the foundation. So what are we actually talking about here? When you hear virtual reality, you might think of headsets and games, but according to Professor Kiskinov's work, it's something much more fundamental. It's an artificial reality, yes, but its most crucial feature, the real game changer, is that it serves as a universal modeling tool. The ability to model anything, well, that's where the implications for law get really profound. So building on that idea, we get to virtual legal reality. And this is a really important distinction. This isn't just about laws concerning the internet. No. This is the entire ecosystem, the whole shebang, where law actually exists and operates online. It's the sum of everything, the rules, the processes, and the outcomes that happens when law functions in this digital space. You can look at this from two different angles, and you really need both to get the complete picture. From the legal perspective, we're talking about the what, the actual phenomena, like digital legal acts and electronic registers. But from the technological perspective, we're looking at the how, the interconnected systems and databases that make it all work. They're two sides of the same coin, and both are essential. And look, this isn't some abstract theory. You and I interact with virtual legal reality every single day. Complex systems like e-government, e-justice, e-commerce, even things we take for granted like electronic registers and certified email. These are all concrete, real-world examples of law operating within this digital framework. All right, now we get to that key idea of virtual reality as a universal modeling tool. This is where we see how VR doesn't just provide a space for legal activity, it actively reshapes the activity itself. This transformation happens in three major steps. First, legal norms can be realized automatically through technology without a person needing to be directly involved. Second, this creates a totally new cognitive environment where legal concepts aren't just in books or in someone's head, they exist in a shared, accessible space. And this leads us to the third step, a merger of worlds, where the tools for practicing law become the very same tools for learning law.
And that brings us right to the heart of this analysis, erasing educational boundaries. We're talking about a genuine revolution in legal training, where the lines drawn for centuries between the classroom and the real world are starting to just dissolve.
I mean, think about traditional legal education. For generations, trying to simulate a real legal environment in a classroom was, well, it was a challenge. Moot courts, role-playing, they're useful, for sure, but they were always just an approximation of the real thing. But this is where everything changes, because the tools of virtual legal reality, the databases, the systems, the platforms, are the same for professionals and students. Professor Kiskinov argues that the boundaries between the professional and educational environments can be completely erased. Let that sink in for a moment. Not blurred, but completely erased. This creates a situation that is truly unprecedented in the history of education. Now, of course, a radical shift like this doesn't happen without some friction. It directly challenges teaching methods that have been established for centuries, and that's bound to create tension in a profession that isn't always quick to change. So, how does this actually work in practice? How do you take the abstract concepts of law and represent them in a digital world? Well, this next section is all about making the invisible visible. It's about turning abstract rules into concrete structures. The key process here is something called formalization. This is the essential first step. It's the act of translating abstract legal rules and concepts into a structured, logical format that a computer system can actually understand and process. The result of that formalization process is what Professor Kiskinov calls a legal structure. You can think of it like a standardized blueprint. It's a uniform way to map out all the different parts of the legal system and show exactly how they all relate to one another. And these structures can represent pretty much everything,
From the legal norms themselves, to legal acts, to the organizations and people involved, even core concepts and the relationships between different legal actors, you can essentially map the entire legal universe.
All of this leads us to our final section, a completely new educational paradigm. This is where the focus shifts from students simply receiving information to them actively creating legal solutions.
This shift is fundamental. We're moving away from the passive reception of knowledge and toward the mastery of skills and methods. We're going from the simple repetition of information to providing guidance and creating solutions. And we're shifting from abstract theory to the very hands-on skills of formalization and synthesis. It's a total flip.
And in this new model, the role of the professor changes dramatically. They're no longer just a repeater of knowledge to be memorized. Instead, they become a guide, a mentor who helps students learn the methods to explore the legal landscape for themselves and to build their own solutions within it.
This all brings us to a final, really important question. If law is evolving from something you primarily interpret to a system you can actively help engineer, what does that mean for the future? What becomes the most critical skill for the lawyer of tomorrow?